with the flow. If you are comfortable with that, and when we run out of time, we'll stop.
Yeah.
And then we'll pick up again next time you're in.
Yeah, great. That's great. I think yeah, if we have anything remaining, it'll be a small portion and we'll be able to get to the other part of what was planned for part two easily enough. So that sounds great. So now we're going to talk a little bit about on the market side. And there's Roots Farm on the left and Anson doing the ribbon cutting. The Yellow Barn.
I don't say any scissors.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was thinking again about my daughter.
You
Would
roll
love
ribbon.
love a pair of scissors that size. Cause some real havoc. All right, so we since 2010, we've been tracking local food purchases in the state. And yeah, and developing a methodology that has now been adopted by the 5 other New England states. So we're starting to see other states in the region report these figures based on the methodology that we've developed. And I'll just explain there is some nuances to this, but just upfront to know local food purchases are 10.1% of total food purchases in Vermont. So one of every $10 that a Vermonter is spending on, or I shouldn't say a Vermonter because this is part of the nuance. So, every one of $10 is being spent, or 10 of 100 is being used on local food that's produced here in the state. And that so the 2022 number is a projection. So the other New England states did their local food counts recently for 2022. And it was a little closer to the intervals than we normally do. So we're going to be participating in the next round of it. So we made a projection of what the values would be. But up until 2020, the numbers that you see in green are the numbers that we collected data for local food purchasing from distributors, retailers, farms, food manufacturers. And in 2020, that estimate was that $371 million are being spent on local food in the state. Now, the thing that has changed, and this has changed what we previously reported around that percentage, is the denominator side of the equation. So the total amount of food purchases that, total amount of dollars spent on food in the state. We, based on the available data we had up until 2020, projected that the spending was 2.3 billion. Now, fortunately, for long-term sort of tracking and analysis, data became available to us that previously wasn't at the state level. So there's a food expenditure data set that's reported at the national level that before 2023 we hadn't had access to. Now that data is being provided at the state level. The downside of that is that it increases the total food expenditure amount and changes our percentage. It reduces the percentage. So for 2022, that number's $4.7 billion. The revised figure for 2020 then would be about 3.6 billion or 3.7 billion. And so the 2020 value previously we reported as being 16.1% if you use that $2.3 billion. But now if we applied this new data set, it would be 3.6, and that's how you get to 10.1. And then we just projected 10.1 as a percentage of the 2022 value. So we're projecting that the local food purchasing is $481 million in the state. That does include alcohol sales. Yeah, so just to know that it is food and beverage and it's inclusive of alcohol.
Does it include like plant starts? Like if I buy a zucchini seedling, does that count? Or it only counts if it's the zucchini harvested at the end?
Yeah, only if it's, so we're looking at, sales that a distributor would be reporting, a retailer, a direct to consumer farm sale
So ready to eat, not growing.
It's sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
John? Representative O'Brien?
Yeah,
Just the context, once again, like I'd love to know what some of the other New England states are, or if any state like California is over, say, 50, because it's a big food growing state.
Go to the next slide.
is it on there? I don't know if I have the new one. No, because I was trying to reduce the number. But we do.
The 6-state region combined is 3.1. Yeah, there's a few states that were at 2.7% and a couple that were at 3.1% or 3.3%. They were all shocked going through this because they really thought that their numbers would be higher.
Yeah.
We had real difficulty collecting the data from in the other states because they're not as far along as we are with developing the relationships with distributors and grocers and such. So I think it's fair to say they're quite motivated now to try to get better data the next time, and we'll be running the same process for 2025 data. So this time next year, we will be in the collection mode for 2025 data. So we'll see.
Does this put us, say, in the top 10 of the
Oh,
country?
this is the percentage. Oh, no other state does it. No other state.
They don't measure.
counts.
They don't
You
track it.
cannot
So we
get
don't
this
know,
data, you can't get this data from any federal source. We have to literally go out and collect it. Okay, so nobody else, we made the methodology available. Nobody else, until we got the other 5 states to do it in New England, was doing it. So the important thing to understand though, and I've been trying to help the other states to better understand this, like the dollar amount is actually quite significant. 3%, 3.1%, 3.3% in Massachusetts is over $1 billion. Like, it's a lot of money, right? Even if the percentage is small, because it's a ratio between like how big Massachusetts is in terms of population and total sales. They also tend to eat more out in restaurants than in Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine does, for instance. So everything about it is a little bit different, but the point is, we have a long way to go to get to a regional goal of 30%. And we even have a long way to go in Vermont. We've set a target to get by 2030 to get to 25%. So we've got some work to do.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman. So that regional goal, that would be Vermont foods sold in Massachusetts or
Including all of it.
Okay.
No, all
You-
6 states doing.
working together?
Yeah.
So you realize lobstermen lie?
Lobsterman.
I didn't know that.
Sorry about fishing. Yeah, same thing, same thing.
Go ahead.
Jake, this is maybe just asking for guesswork, but
yeah,
we have all observed the growth in breweries
Mhm.
and distilleries all over the state, not just Lamoille County or Washington County.
Yeah.
What is your best guess of what percentage of this growth has come from that particular, beer and alcohol spirits?
I can give you an answer to that, but I just need to look at our data a little more closely. I know that from 2014 to 2017, it was a pretty big driver. But actually we actually didn't have a lot of the alcohol sales data from 2017 to 2020. So that shift is actually more driven by retail. Primarily retail sales. So actually the 2020 figure is a low estimate because it's not accounting for all of the alcohol sales local in the state. So it's a big amount, but there are some other sort of large contributors to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that, so we count beer sales, even though the barley, or is it just the stuff that if the majority of the crop to make the beer or the alcohol is grown in Vermont and turned into it, or does that
So there's
include imports? Because then I could get milk from Wisconsin, bring it here, turn it into cheese, we call it a Vermont product, but it isn't.
Yeah, so we utilize the definition for local that's in statute, and that differentiates, a local raw product needing to be grown here for some of the value added categories, there's distinctions. But for milk, it would have to be milk that's produced here. For some other like coffee, and yeah, alcohol where there's, yeah, different kind of transformations of the product happening and there isn't a sufficient local supply. Yeah, so there's some nuance there, but yeah, so it's, we try to really, we try to account for it as much as possible. It's like the inputs are coming from Vermont. And then there are some, value added categories where when that's not the case.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I haven't tried growing coffee yet, but I'm gonna try coffee. I am.
Just the only other thing I want to draw your attention to too with this is, and with that 2020 bar, is our old method was calculating purchasing at the household level. So there is some insight we can start to gain around what Vermonters are spending and what people from out of state are adding to food purchases. That's not perfect. So the difference between the 2.3 and the 3.6 billion is not all like tourist driven food expenditures, but I think some portion of that is. So this does start to give us a little bit of a picture of like how much people from out of state are driving total expenditures.
And just really quickly, towards that regional goal of 30% by 2030, if you take all 6 states, is it 21%? Is that?
No, we're at 3.1%.
It's 3.1%, yeah, for the region.
See? Whoa, yeah. No,
Right here,
in the
okay.
research that we did for this New England project, we looked at pounds produced across the 6 states. And the pounds was close to 21%. But that's assuming that all of that food, which includes the lobsters, gets eaten here. And we know that most of the seafood, most cranberries, most Maine blueberries, most Maine potatoes, a lot of Vermont milk, a lot of Vermont maple is exported outside of the region, right? So that 21% of pounds produced, if we could capture more of it and keep it here, that could be for local consumption. But that's still a ways away from 30% on the, like, being able to even consume 30%. Yeah.
No, we need to be able to export to drive our dollars. But it's just to capture. I dare say there may be more value in an acre of onions or carrots than there is an acre of corn silage run through a dairy cow.
I think that's right, Jake? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's been proven, yeah.
I think there's a reason Pete Green's a professional onion farmer.
Are you saying you want to get into onion?
Just a quick question.
Go ahead, John.
Just observation for Ellen on that. All that food that gets exported outside.
Yeah.
Is there capacity in New England to eat all that, to capture it? Like essentially, does it come back in and it's eaten, those percentages in New England? Like our milk that leaves the
I
state.
mean, it would require New Englanders to prioritize their purchases.
Yeah.
More local, but right.
But there are enough people here though, right?
There's still gonna be things that you could, like for instance, lobster and a lot of our seafood, very high value products. Folks in the region, won't eat that much food, that much fish. Right? We are producing more than we would likely eat because most people consume their fish in a restaurant. So places where there's not a lot of restaurants with a lot of fish on the menu, let alone local fish, you're just not gonna move that. There's a reason why a lot of that gets sold to other parts of the world even.
So we also, we break this down and look at it by market channel. So to sort of start to understand where this local food consumption or purchasing is happening. And it is happening across a diversity of markets. So retail is the largest percentage. Direct to consumer is a significant portion, and then restaurants. And then our kind of institutional sales, across K through 12, higher ed, and hospitals. The higher ed decline from 2017 to 2020 was COVID related. So, the schools shut down for a period of time, not as many kids on campus. And so that's why there was that dip. So we would expect that number to increase. And then I think, the K through 12 is, that growth is, I think, certainly a reflection of all the great work that's happening through farm to school programs, and the development that's there. So, we're seeing real results in the reported figures for that work. And I may have lost my ability to. There we go. So just to take a deeper dive into the retail grocery sector, because one, it is still the largest percentage of local food purchasing is happening in retail. It is where the majority of food dollars are spent by Vermonters and people in this country, and so it represents a huge additional opportunity. So we are reaching a very small fraction of sales potential, but there are many challenges. It's not without reason for why we haven't seen as much success there. But $1.8 billion spent at grocery stores or supercenters, warehouse clubs in Vermont. 36.7 billion spent at grocery stores, supercenters in New England. So huge market potential. And this is just showing that in Vermont, and this is 2017, looking across different sales channels, is expenditures at grocery stores are 56% of total food expenditures. Restaurants, another 30%. And then you start to see, right, the numbers start to dwindle down and get much smaller in other sales channels. Yeah.
So,
Or go ahead.
so it doesn't say like farm stand or farmer's market. Direct sales, so that counts. Direct sales is if you're buying from the farmer in one of those different capacities. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I wasn't seeing it. Got it.
Yeah.
But 1.6%.
Yeah. Small amount.
Yeah.
And relatively static, like that's 2 slides earlier, you'll see there wasn't a lot of direct to consumer sale shift between 2017 and 2020. Stayed about the same. And that's likely that market saturation point that we've talked about. And, it's sort of believed that a lot of the growth potential is in these other retail, wholesale market channels.
Representative Burke.
I'm all set. And then, so within the state of Vermont, there a lot of these retail stores are small or independently owned. So actually independent stores make up the majority of retail stores in the state. The food co-ops at 11, so that's the most co-ops in the New England region. But certainly we also have larger grocery, national, multinational owned grocery stores in the state as well. So we have actually been doing a lot of support to the independent retail industry and supporting their local purchasing and operations. But the question is begging to be asked is how do we access some of these larger grocery chains in the state as well that are also operating in the region. And if you're looking at New England, small, yeah.
There's 914 dollar stores or Dollar Generals
Yeah.
across the 6 states.
And I should say, maybe some of these stores we don't want to pay,
914.
devote our attention to. And then if you look at the region, there's huge opportunities with small stores across the New England region. So in Massachusetts alone, 969 small stores. So that's, I think the definition around that is whether it's independently owned or less than 10 kind of franchise or owned stores. And so in Massachusetts, that's 64% of all their retail stores are considered to be small. So there's huge opportunity within the state. There's huge opportunity in the region to increase, local sort of market access to these stores and in turn also local purchasing across the region in the retail environment. So direct sales, looking at this, direct sales, we saw there was that big basic boom that happened from 2007 to basically 2017. A lot of farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, right? We're seeing a lot of increased activity and purchasing. The average sales per farm in the direct market space was increasing over time. And then if you look at this, you would say, okay, things have kind of flattened out. The other thing also to consider here is that the jump from 2012 to 2017 is that the census started adding value-added products that are sold directly, that are produced and sold directly off farm to that amount. So that's why there was a big jump as well, as they changed the way that they were adding these kind of additional types of products into the direct sales. So that has been a shift. But also now the census is tracking what they call direct sales through intermediated markets. So these are direct sales, say a farm that is selling directly to a retailer or directly to an institution or directly to a food hub. So those sales have increased nearly 86% since the USDA started tracking those figures. So more than $100 million are direct sales that farms are selling either direct retail institutions or food hubs. So if you look at those two numbers combined, direct sales through direct to consumer, but also direct to these intermediated markets, that number is increasing. And it'll be, I think, something to really pay attention to in the next census to see if that growth continues as farms consider as they're growing or expanding, accessing more of that direct to retail institution or food hub space as their way to access new markets and consumers rather than expanding, say, their immediate direct to consumer operations. And all right, so I'm just checking time here. So yeah, we'll do a little stuff on land, and then I think we'll be at a stopping point for the day. So we're going to cover some stuff around land and the environment. So we've got these environmental sustainability goals, that speak to sequestration, to stewardship, to conserving land, and to nutrient management. So the high level trend for farmland in Vermont is that it has decreased over time. Historically, this figure is more dramatic, but from 1997, nearly 11% decrease in farmland in the state. And in the lab from 2017 to 2022, a 1.6% decrease. And there's the business as usual scenarios also suggest that we will continue to lose land to development. I know there's a lot going on in this slide, but this was American Farmland Trust did analysis, farms under threat, looking at different development scenarios. And if we're assuming business as usual case, we could potentially lose another 41,000 acres. In a more sort of accelerated development scenario, that number could be closer to 62,000 acres of farmland. And they were also trying to project and analyze in what places in the state would these losses occur. So that's where if you spend more time looking at this, but Addison is certainly farmland in Vermont is under threat. Franklin, Chittenden, Washington are some areas, Rutland as well. So the farmland across the state is potentially susceptible to future development in this business as usual.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Chairman. The loss of farmland, you consider the loss of farmland through conservation. In other words, Silvio Conte trying to buy land along the Connecticut River, that's good arable land, and remove it for production. I'm on the Waterfowl Advisory Board. Every time we look at a piece of land, the first thing out of my mouth is that good farmland? I don't believe we're gonna lose some of the development pressure. Communities need to grow. Our demographics and housing are in trouble. Of course, we can do things with housing too to help that. But I really think we gotta watch out for taking good farmland and turning it into a museum.
Yes.
So question, I think, is whether the loss later, this is not just developmental loss, it could be in some cases land that's been taken out of production for conservation purposes.
Yeah, so this analysis, I don't think is taking that into account, but certainly with the 30 by 30 conservation and I forget the act number that was passed 2 years ago. I know there is that concern of if we don't consider agricultural land in those calculations, and we're making that land susceptible to land use changes over time, which could be, we could be, and this is a big issue too with energy development is solar siting that is literally overlaid right on top of prime ag soil, and what kind of protections exist around that. We obviously have some mechanisms through Act 250 to conserve land, but I think there's still some real policy questions around, should we be developing prime ag soils? Just should we be doing that at all? So those are some definite concerns.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, we took testimony last week from FPR that allowed that we're actually gaining forested land as opposed to losing it. It went from maybe 74% to 76%.
Yeah.
And they attribute a lot of that to the dormant, non-productive ag land. It was natural succession turning into woodland or forest land. So when I see those numbers there, I think the conversion, which is not the development, but converting from ag land to forest land, needs to be considered to be accurate.
I'm just gonna, because I do want to point, there is a slide addressing that, so I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but so if you look at the trends of farmland then has different land use categories that are tracked, and the woodland acreage on farms has increased by 19.4% since 2007, and is the majority land use type of agricultural land in the state. So we've got more woodland on our farmland than we do cropland. And then cropland, pasture, those land use types have decreased over time. So speaking.
And in the woodland conversion is not likely prime ag soils. It's
correct. And I think the other another element of the takeaway from this is that farmers are managing different types of land on their land, right? They're not just farming cropland; they're managing woodland, pasture, and so they are stewards that are both important for farmland stewardship, but also woodland forestry.
I think 47% of farmland is woodland. Almost half.
Here's that. So yeah, as Abby just said that 47, no, I was like, oh, I think there's like, there's, so 47% is woodland, 34% cropland. And then if you also just looking at that cropland acreage, the majority, the vast majority is dedicated to, animal feed. And so, we're talking about sort of value generated per acre, vegetables in terms of the actual like cropped land of vegetables is only 3,650 acres. So if we think about that, 3,650 acres generating $44 million, is, pretty significant value per acre.
So just going back to Jed's question, then there's some overlap. Woodland, the farmland includes woodland, as
Yeah.
we're seeing here. And the loss of, the kind of loss that Jed was describing where ag land is no longer productive or
Right.
it begins to succeed into forest land.
Yeah.
That wouldn't necessarily be counted when you're showing the back a few slides, the loss of farmland. It's still farmland.
Correct,
That's it.
yes. So
Yeah.
for the purpose of the census, it's still designated, the full the fully owned property is considered farmland, but, at parcel levels, they then, break that out as.
So this is something else going on here.
Yeah, yeah,
We should probably wrap up, Jake, just because we need to be downstairs in 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
I know we're in the middle of this section of the slide, so, and you skipped over a few. I think maybe we can go back and
yeah.
make sure we didn't miss anything.
Yeah,
Back and forth.
I'll just do these last two, sort of in this, kind of land use, category. So we can also look at this by acres of farmland by the commodity type. So certainly dairy, you can see from that, the amount of acreage in dairy has decreased, but a lot of that has shifted over into that other crop farming. So that's kind of the feed and forage. And hay is also, kind of a contributor to, certainly dairy industry, but also beef. So those first four land use types are livestock, or actually five, because other animal production is the next. So the five most like land intensive categories are associated with livestock. We have seen increases in these other land use areas, but just looking at the vegetable acreage, that figure that I quoted on the other slide, which was that 30,262 acres of vegetable acreage, only about 3,600 of that is actually in crop, is in crop production. So it's just the sort of intensity of these other commodity types is not at the same scale as livestock in the state. And then, just seeing this as a percent breakdown, kind of thinking of this as, if you had 100 acres, here's kind of what it would look like if you were following those amounts. So dairy is 29%, crop farming 27, hay 15, beef 9. So again, a lot of that you can see from that is tied up into livestock production, and then kind of the produce, grains, and kind of small ruminants, poultry make up the remainder. So I think that's a good place to stop. Yeah.
Thank you for all that information, and thank you to the committee for a good conversation. We'll pick it up here on Friday, and